Hey, what's up, Spartan Nation? Welcome to another episode of the Spartan Nation Podcast. Here with your host, Matt Lonsberry, and my co host, Aiden McCrone. And Aiden, here we are again. It feels like it's been very back and forth on our podcast lately. We'll have one that's very positive and then one that's kind of negative, and then we kind of go back and forth, and that's how it's been. That's how Michigan State's men's basketball season has gone. So tonight, a little bit more of the on the negative side of things, coming off of the loss to Iowa. We are going to touch a little bit on the win over Michigan over the weekend. But obviously, the most recent result was that game against Iowa, and not the outcome that Michigan State fans and players and Coach Izzo were looking for. So we'll dive into all of that. I did want to start with one thing though. Coming into the month of February, Aiden, you talked about looking at the schedule and thinking, and thinking Michigan State could go undefeated this month.
Yeah.
And the crazy thing is they got the hard one. They beat Illinois at
Yeah.
home, but a top 10 Illinois team. They got that W. And yet here they are at 4-2 so far this month. So it's the craziness of this team where you get up for that game against Illinois and you find a way to win it, and drop a very winnable home game. I saw whole in the comments. Home game against Iowa, and then that we talked about that road loss to Minnesota a couple shows ago. But I guess where are you at with this whole February 4-2 record? Because I know you were expecting more.
Yeah, I think it's a serious problem. I mean, when you look at the schedule ahead outside of February, right? You have Purdue, you have at Purdue, then you have Northwestern at home, and then at Indiana, and those are three very losable games. And I think even if you lose one of those, I don't know if they control their own destiny if they lose to
Okay.
Purdue in the tournament. And I think they were competing for that 4 seed in the Big Ten tournament to get that double bye. And going into the Iowa game, they had an opportunity to jump Wisconsin and Northwestern to move into that double bye slot. And
Right.
yeah, and they can essentially kiss that goodbye, unless Wisconsin and Northwestern drop games, but that doesn't seem very likely. So yeah, I think it's extremely problematic. I think those are the Minnesota game and the Iowa game are, if you were picking games to lose on that in the month of February, I think those were two of the 7 that would be closer at the bottom. So yeah, I mean that's really all I have to say right now. I think a lot of people are going to talk about the center position.
Yeah, we'll get into
but
it.
I really, yeah, I mean, well, yeah, we'll get into it. But I really think just the team as a whole, I think that was just a poor effort, because I do think Jackson Kohler played, I think, arguably his best game of the season yesterday. I think defensively he played. That was his best defensive game that we've seen him at MSU. But offensively, he struggled, but the rest of the team also struggled. So, so I'll give props to him defensively, because I think that was his biggest flaw. That I think that's his biggest flaw is, can he, be even average defensively? And I thought he played well yesterday, but yeah, they still couldn't get it done.
Yeah, to your point, Jackson Kohler did have 3 blocks yesterday's game, and was in good position for most of this time out there. 19 minutes played. Yeah, we'll definitely talk about the bigs. Real quickly, let's kind of talk about the Michigan game, just because I don't want to completely ignore it.
Right.
It is a rivalry game. It was Michigan State's first sweep of Michigan since 2019, getting that win in Ann Arbor. Since Juwan Howard had been hired, each team had won at home. So again, and that was the 8th win out of 10 games for Michigan State. And so, like, again, it was the team seemed to be in ascent mode again. And let's just talk about that game briefly. Trying to think back to it. I mean, it feels like, I know it's only been 3 or 4 days, but it feels like it's been a lot longer. But I know Tyson Walker played well. Didn't shoot the ball great, but still, I think scored 19. Malik Hall was really good once again. And Cohen Carr putting on a show against the rivals. So your takeaway with just that first game against Michigan. We'll touch on this briefly before we dive into Iowa.
Yeah, I mean, I think both games against Michigan this year were tough, and I think Michigan played above, their level that they've played at all season. I mean, they shot the ball well again. Jalen Llewellyn played well. I know they didn't have Terrence Williams, but
McDaniel got hot there for a stretch in the
Doug McDaniel,
first half.
Yeah, and Reed was good as usual. So yeah, I think Michigan played them tough, and there was a stretch there where it's like, okay, MSU could potentially lose this, and then we see the takeover in the second half. I think Malik Hall found his footing. Tyson Walker found his footing at the end, and while they, like you mentioned, they didn't shoot very well, but they managed to grind it out. And kind of fast forward to yesterday, that kind of gives you a little bit of confidence that, hey, this is a rivalry game where we've struggled to score, and we've struggled to win at Michigan. So the fact that we went and won that game, speaks numbers about maybe this team is gaining some momentum heading into March. And then obviously they dropped the ball against Iowa, but I do think they played well. It was a lot of people will say trap game. I don't think it was a trap game per se, but it was a game where you knew that Michigan was going to play above the way or better than they've been playing in past games. So I think that was huge that they came out with a win, and then followed it up with yesterday.
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned Terrace Reed though, because he played very well for Michigan, and
No, I can't. We can't hear you. You're muted. 1 second.
Hear me?
Yeah.
All right. I can't hear you. Aiden, continue talking. I'm going to go get another headset.
All right. Well, so while he's going to get another headset, I mean, I can go on about kind of the Iowa game and a little bit about the guard play. So, I mean, we've seen Akins. He played well the first Michigan game. He's gotten hot lately. And then he kind of took a slump. He was kind of quiet. He was quiet in the Michigan game. He didn't get a ton of touches against Iowa. And, we're starting to see that kind of, inconsistency with Akins. And it's not really him per se, but it's kind of just getting him the ball is a lot of the problem, because we do see, while we have seen Michigan State have the lowest turnover margin, or the highest, they've had the lowest amount of turnovers in the Izzo era. AJ Hoggard still continues to struggle with, keep handling the ball. And we saw that against Iowa, and that was their downfall, is they really didn't handle the ball very well. And, we saw that with Hoggard. We saw it with Walker. He had a couple turnovers as well. So the turnover battle is ongoing, but it doesn't help when you also can't rebound either. And then just, getting Akins, who right now is probably one of your hottest players in terms of scoring. He can't get the ball a ton because he's playing a lot of off ball with, Holloman, Walker, and Hoggard running the point. So it's just a constant struggle. And I think that was their downfall against Iowa. And, the guards playing looks like we lost Matt, so we'll get him back in a second. But also the defense, I think, like I mentioned, I thought Kohler had a really good game defensively. I thought when he came out and it was Cooper, I know a lot of people will talk about Madi Sissoko and his kind of woes that he's had up and down this whole season. But I thought the bigs played well defensively against a team who, has good bigs. Owen Freeman could win, freshman of the year in the Big Ten. He's that good. And, you had, Kohler, who, has been a question mark defensively, played well, but I think the guards really struggled with, Patrick McCaffrey. So I think it was a little bit of a surprise to some. I think, coming into the season, a lot of people talked about how, great of defenders Walker, Hogard, Akins, and even Holloman were, and, even Fears as well. But they really struggled last night against, some guards who don't have as much athleticism, but were better shooters. And they still found their way to get to the basket too. I think the size difference also mattered a lot last night as well.
All right, so what did I miss? Because I couldn't hear. I had to figure that out.
I was just talking about the guard play from yesterday,
Okay.
as well as a little bit of kind of Aiken specifically struggling a little bit the last two games.
Okay. Well, going back to the point I was trying to make before my headset died, I plugged it in before the show too, so apparently it wasn't long enough. But anyway, Terrace Reed played very well against Michigan State. And I feel like that just even more so highlighted just the need that Michigan State has for a guy who can make a difference in the post. And that was very obvious against Iowa. And so that was kind of one of my takeaways from the Michigan State game was, Michigan State was able to put together an excellent last 7 minutes to make sure they got that win. It was a win they had to have. But again, it was just evident that Tom Izzo needs to address this center position this coming off season. Can't do anything about it right now. And I'm not looking into like next year's recruiting class. There's not some dominant center in the recruiting class. So again, it goes back to the transfer portal. I know that's been a high point of contention when it comes to Tom Izzo and his approach to the game. But like when you have a glaring need like that, it needs to be addressed. And so I'm interested to see if this season does anything to shake that at all. Izzo has gone in and grabbed a Joey Hauser and a Tyson Walker. So it's not that he's like adamant or it's not going to happen, but he hasn't been super active. And so I'm just, that's one of the things I thought about during that game in particular.
Yeah. I think I saw something on Twitter either today or last night about Izzo said in the off season on some show or podcast or press conference or whatever that he said, the transfer portal might come back to bite them eventually. And I think we're really seeing that right now. And, it's again, and you've said this countless times on here that, Carson Cooper and Madi Sissoko are not bad. They're playable, but they are role players. They are not starters. And I completely agree with that. And I think, when you look at the guard problems as well, it's not, there's not as many problems as the front court, but when you look at that, I mean, right now, as how far we are into the season, including the 3 to 4 year span that we've really had watching MSU, it feels like it starts at the top with Izzo. I think all of those issues, it really starts at the top with him, and what their downfall is. I mean, part of it is the portal, but part of it is going to be something that we don't see in day to day, where it's behind the scenes, whether it's practice, whether it's relationships with the players, whether it's the team bonding that he doesn't even see, whatever it is. It obviously has not all come together within the past 3-4 years. So I think that's something to look at, big picture, and obviously game by game basis, it does fluctuate and goes up and down, because they have played to their potential, but they've also played very inconsistent within the last 3 years.
Yeah, and it kind of speaks a little bit to Steve's point, where he's making the argument that like There's maybe a section of fans who are like, well, we beat Michigan, we're going to get back in the NCAA tournament. That's good enough. That certainly hasn't been the attitude on our show. We've talked about this a couple different times, Aiden, where there is a standard for this program, and it should be one of the top 10 to 15 programs every single year. Like that's what this program is. And has been under Izzo, and it just hasn't been that of these last 4 years. They're hovering right around 500 in the Big Ten. Over if you combine all of these last 4 years together, I think they're maybe 1 or 2 games above. But again, that's not what this program has been historically, and it shouldn't be accepted. And I don't know what not accepting it looks like for the fan base. There is a section of fans who are ready for some fresh blood and ready for Tom Izzo to hang up the whistle. I'm not sure I'm there yet, but I'm not like adamantly against either. For one thing, I'm like I'm trying to come from an objective standpoint as well when I look at this, and I've watched Izzo my whole life. So I'm not firmly in one camp or the other. I just know that these last 4 years have not been good enough and do not live up to the standards of this program. And something's got to change. I think a lot of it is just a lack of, coaches talk about, coach-led versus player-led a lot, like the locker rooms. And I just feel like this is not a player-led team right now. And, some of that falls on AJ Hoggard. He has moments. It's the same story with AJ Hoggard. He's got these moments where you see the leadership, you see him kind of take control, you see him play at the top of his ability. I mean, last night was a kind of a perfect example of the duality of AJ Hoggard. The first half, 0 for 4, 2 assists, 1 turnover, just not very involved. And then I'm assuming got his butt chewed pretty good at halftime and came out, attacked the rim against Iowa's 2-3 zone, went 4. I think he made like his first 5 shots, 4 for 4 at the rim, and then knocked down a 3 in the corner and quickly had 11 points. And it's like, dude, like I just don't understand it, because we've seen this now for the last 3 years that AJ has been a regular part of the rotation. It's just what it's been. And I mean, I've got it in my notes here. I just don't think it's going to change. Like it's this is just kind of who he is as a player. And when he's good, Michigan State can do some things. And when he plays like he did in the first half last night, that puts all the more pressure on Tyson Walker, Malik Hall to carry the load. And they just can't do it on their own.
Yeah, that's a really good point. I didn't really think of, but yeah, I think the player led issue is very serious. I think, because obviously something's not clicking and there's inconsistency within, everyone's play. And I think Malik Hall has been very consistent as of lately, and we've acknowledged that. But at the same time, we've seen some dips from, the other leaders of the team, which are, AJ Hoggard, Tyson Walker, Jaden Akins as well, just fluctuating again. So, yeah, I mean, I think that's a really good point. I mean, I think, Izzo likes to have a player-led team. He's talked about that constantly. So, that's really important. And, yeah, a game like Iowa, again, like that's not a team where, defensively they're going to shut you down. They're going to, they're not the greatest on defense. So they're going to let you score. So when Hoggard cannot, get to scoring in the first half, that really hurts them. And, Malik Hall struggled a little bit in the first half as well. So, I mean, there's really not much we can say that we haven't already said. Again, sure. It feels like it's like we've said the same stuff, 2 weeks ago. And then, last week it's like, okay, we see a better team. And then, we're back to square one right now.
For sure. This is a really good point from Chris in the comments. The days of if a player stayed 4 years, they would make a Final Four seem like a long time ago. That's I mean, the last ones to make it the Final Four were Cassius and Xavier Tillman, like that group. And it wasn't their senior year because unfortunately their senior year got it got cut short because of COVID. But yeah, that was a running thing for a long time with program. Yeah, you stick around, you're going to go to a Final Four eventually. Just keep working towards it. But I mean, here we are, 4 years removed from COVID, and man, it's so strange because I would not be shocked if this team went on a run in March. I wouldn't be shocked. But the lack of consistency just makes it feel unlikely. Not like very unlikely, but just unlikely. And that's kind of where I'm at right now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm also with that. I think, when this team plays to their potential, when we see a Baylor game, when we see a Illinois game, you can see it and say, hey, this is a top 10 team in the country. They competed to the highest level. They gave it their all. You could see it out there. Like, this team could be built to make it to Phoenix this year. And then, you watch last night and you're like, okay, is this team even going to make the tournament? So I think a question I would pose would be, regardless of the Final Four conversation, would it do more harm or, would do more help than harm if MSU let's say they made the NIT instead of the NCAA tournament? Would that be, a kick in the butt for Izzo and tell him, hey, I need to go back to my old ways? Or is that something where it's like, we missed our tournament, our streak's over, everything's going to crumble down? Like, what would be the thought process, I guess, of, the potential or even, the thought of being an NIT team instead of an NCAA tournament?
I think if there's anything that's going to initiate change, it would probably be that, like, to not even, because like making the NCAA tournament has been the baseline for this program. Like, they've done it 25, 26 years in a row. And so to not achieve that is to be below your floor, or what your floor has been for the last decade or quarter century. So I think if that didn't initiate change, nothing will. Like, nothing would. As we look at where Michigan State's at right now, I still think they're in a good spot to make the tournament. And when I say good spot, I'm not saying, oh yeah, the team's in a good spot. I just mean that to reach that baseline, they're in a good spot. I think they're going to make it. Going into the yesterday's game, they were projected, I think, as a 7 seed by Joe Lunardi. I didn't look at the other ones yesterday, but I think there was a bit of a consensus around the 7 line or 8. So they had some cushion. But it's unfortunate now that this is not that we've been doing a show for 4 years, but the conversation around Michigan State basketball each of these last 4 years has been, is the streak going to continue? Like, can they continue to get in? There was the year that they were part of the first 4. I think they lost to UCLA in the first 4, and UCLA ends up going to the Final Four or something that year, which was crazy. But that was the conversation. That was as close as they've come to not making it. And they got in as a 7 seed last year and didn't make it to the Sweet 16. And that game against Kansas State was a classic. I can't remember the kid's name from Kansas State who was from New York and had a great game.
Yeah, but Jalen Noel.
Yeah, the battle between him and Tyson Walker, though, was memorable. I was there. But again, this is not this isn't what we come to expect for this program. So, and I will stick to the belief that, like, the fan base cannot accept less. It can't, because that's when you lose. That's when you lose your standing in your place in the echelon of college basketball. There was a comment here from Jason Satala. I'm going to go with Satala. Hopefully that's right. But again, I hate to say I told you so, and I'm not speaking directly to you, Aiden, but like, we had a show, and maybe it was our last one, and Izzo kind of came out and said, yeah, Xavier's going to play some more minutes. And I'm thinking, I don't believe you. Like I'm thinking of that meme or GIF on Twitter where it's Anchorman, and I don't believe you.
Yeah.
We've heard it so often. I think I talked about it on our last show about like, hey, I'll believe it when I see it, but I just don't think Tom Izzo trusts Cohen Carr and Xavier Booker in crunch time. And sure enough, like I think last night was a good example. Now, when it comes to Cohen, he's not a floor spacer. He's not a shooter. And so against Iowa's zone, I kind of understood the lack of minutes for Cohen. Now you can say, yeah, you can get on the break. And we've talked about Cohen's strengths, but I kind of understood the coaching decision against Iowa's 2-3 zone. But with as poorly as Michigan State's bigs played last night, and the one guy who made like a shot inside like the 3-foot line of the bigs was Xavier Booker on that little hook that he had. I think he got fouled, missed the free throw. But I just don't know, man. Like if last night wasn't the time to give him a shot, I don't know when the time will come this season.
Yeah, I don't know either. I think the last couple of games, it feels like his minutes have kind of been scripted. It feels like he comes in kind of right before the under 8 or right after the under 8 timeout, and then he's gone before the under 4 timeout. So it feels a little bit scripted where it's like, okay, Izzo's heard what people have been saying, so he's gonna put him in for this amount of time, and then once we get to that under 4, it's like, all right, you're out for the rest of the night. So,
right.
He's played well. I thought, the last 2 games, that whatever 9-10 minutes that he's played, I think he's got 7 points and he's like 3 for 4 from the field, and he's got a few rebounds and everything like that. So, I don't know. He said today, or after the game last night, he said he's got to find the right matchup for Booker. And I don't know when that's going to be. I think he's going to be waiting a long time if that's the case. So, yeah, I mean, there's really nothing more I can say. I do think he trusts Carr a little bit more. Against Michigan, he let him play a pretty good amount. And, but yeah, the Xavier Booker saga is going to continue into the off season, and we'll see if he stays another year. I think he will stay. I feel confident saying that, but at the same time, this is not the greatest kind of first year for him. Whether it's coming from his side or whether it's coming from the coach's side, it doesn't look good either way.
Yeah, no, I my stance on Xavier Booker and the transfer portal thing is like, I'm just going to assume that's not even a thing until like we actually get some smoke around the area. Like I know it's a big topic of discussion among the fan base. And among college basketball, kind of a whole. I saw something on Twitter. I think it was an On3 article about biggest names that could hit the transfer portal. They didn't name Xavier. I didn't read the article, but like his picture was like the photo that they used. And so like I know there's like a conversation going on out there, but until like there's actual smoke, until there's an insider who says, yes, Xavier Booker is unhappy and will probably like it's until something like that hits the Twitterverse or whatever.
Right.
I'm not going to put a whole lot of stock into it just because I don't want to add to a narrative that the kid is not.
Yeah.
Unless he has come out and like he's not on Instagram like subtweeting people or on Twitter subtweeting people and like showing it publicly that he's unhappy. So I'm not going to just assume that he is. But that's not to say that the topic in and of itself is worthless or meaningless, because it is. It's the nature of college athletics right now, right. And we'll have to see what happens with that. I hope that Tom just doesn't talk about that situation again. Like he probably will, but every time it comes out, like I'm starting to roll my eyes now. Every time that it's like, oh yeah, he's going to play more minutes. It's like, well, proof is in the pudding. So until I see it, like I just I just don't believe it.
Yeah.
So we'll see. We'll see as was there 5 regular season games left, I think. 4 games
Right.
left.
Yeah.
Ohio
4.
State and then those 3 in March. So we'll see what happens with that. I'm assuming, did you talk about the centers or the Michigan State's big some more while I was fixing my headset or whatnot? Or
yeah, I touched a little bit on Kohler. Kind of talked about how the narratives kind of behind Mahdi as well. But yeah, I kind of saved it a little bit. So
okay,
so you can go. I think they're tired of hearing me tonight. So
yeah, well, we will. We'll touch on this briefly, and unfortunately, like, this is going to come off critical, but I think we've been on this show. If you go back and watch, our previous shows, I think we've been fair to Mady Sissoko on this show. We've been sympathetic of the fact, he lost his grandmother within the last, month and a half. I think even going back to like before the season began, talking about, potential lineups and things like that, I said that I think there's a role for him. Like, I think you can use him in a role. So it's not like I'm coming out of nowhere and just blasting him personally, but like right now, I just don't think he's bringing a whole lot. And the way I will present it is this: I think he should be the third option at this point at center, behind Carson Cooper and behind Jackson Kohler. That's how I feel about it. He picked up the quick 2 fouls. One of the second foul on him last night was a wild call. Like, I don't understand how he got a foul in that situation. So, like, I'm not going to blame him for that second foul. But he comes back in to start the second half. He gets beat backdoor on Iowa's first bucket. And then there's a straight post up where he got beat again on the post. And then I think off of that make, he's running or quickly after that, he's running down the floor. He's got space in front of him. I can't remember if it was AJ or Tyson who delivered a pass up ahead to him, and there's nobody around him. And if he catches the ball, it's going to be a dunk and 2 points. And once again, those hands, and he fumbles it. By the time he corrals it, he's underneath the basket. He's too far underneath. He can't get, and then kicks it out for a 3 that was missed. And it's just like, how much longer can we do this before it's clear that he needs to be the third guy behind Jackson and Carson?
Yeah, I think I totally see where you're coming from. I think for me personally, I think I said this a few weeks back, was about their struggle was they need to pick a lane of, are we going to be, in Iowa where we're going to play, offense really well, or are we going to be, Houston where we're going to just lock everyone down defensively? And I still think, they're a better offensive team than they are defensive. I know it didn't seem like that yesterday, but I think that's what it is. I think when they win games, when they win against Baylor, when they beat Illinois, they were the better offensive team. So I think they need to commit to that. And I think Kohler is the guy moving forward. I think, over Cooper and Sissoko as well. So I think that's the big thing, but I don't know. I had a friend text me, last night after the game and was like, I really don't think, we know what the bigs are. We know what the issue is, right?
Yeah.
We know the bigs are a weakness. I think it's really up to the guards to make up for that, lost ground that,
Right.
the bigs have, and anything that you can get out of them is a plus. So I feel like I've kind of accepted that and taken it from that perspective, but I totally see what you're saying. I think, the rebounding is just, it's bad. And I think, the fact that he's out there and he's struggling to rebound, and he's, again, he's a senior now and he's still struggling physically against, other Big Ten bigs. I think, that's a problem. And I think that it doesn't completely fall on him. I think it falls on the coaching staff as well to not develop as well as they have in the past. But yeah, it feels like he's almost unplayable at this point, but I don't think he's the only one that we feel that way about either.
Yeah, I mean, that was one of I do 5 observations after every game. That's the article that I put up right away. And that was one of my 5 things was like, I think he's borderline unplayable right now. But to your point about the guards and how they need to step up and be the guys, here's one thing that just I don't get at this point. And I saw this a lot on Twitter, especially early in that game last night. Malik Hall's emergence has been so big for this team. Like, I can't even imagine where this team is at right now if Malik Hall hadn't taken the step that he's taken lately. And his ability to post up and hit that turnaround jumper in the mid-range. Like, here's the thing I don't get. There are some set plays where the ball gets dumped into the post, either Carson or Marty, and everybody just kind of stands and watches that guy try to make a move one-on-one in the post. And it's like, why are they doing this? I don't understand it. Like, I understand, yeah, you've got to get some post touches it opens up other things, but man, like that can't be your offense. Like, it's got to be like just a look from a different angle. Yeah. Dump it into them and then see what, like, move, get open. And like, I don't understand. I'm simplifying Michigan State's offense right now, but like, I don't get those post ups. Like, and I'm a post guy. Like, that was my position. So that's what I played. And so I love to pass out of the post. I just don't understand those possessions that end that way. It feels like wasted possessions.
No, I totally get what you're saying. I think the off-ball movement is definitely an issue that I've observed. I mean, you probably know more than I do, so you probably see that a lot more, and you notice about the posts and stuff. So
Sure.
I haven't really thought about that, but yeah, I think the off-ball movement has been an issue. I think when AJ gets stuck in the corner, there's no one flying to the ball to come help him. It's just kind of they're all just sitting there. So yeah, I mean, I think a big thing that I mean, I guess another question would be, what is the best lineup of bigs, or kind of the three? We've seen a 2 big lineup with Cooper and Kohler, and where does Malik Hall fit in that? Is he a 4? Is he a 3? I think right now it's hard to put him at a 3 considering the other 2 options. But
yeah,
I mean, what does that look like? I think what is the recipe for success heading into March, and the best lineup that's going to give them the best chance to make a run.
Yeah, no, I haven't been a fan of the 2 big lineups. It's they haven't done this, I think, in a long time, but there was a stretch there when Jackson was not quite back yet. He maybe was playing a couple minutes where they tried Marty and Carson out there at the same time. That was a disaster. Like, don't ever do that again. But even the Cooper and Kohler combination, don't love it. Like, it's a little bit better because Jackson has a little bit more of an offensive game, but like Jackson missing all of that time early in the season, it set him back. Maybe set him back a year. And I still really like his potential. I agree with you when you say of the 3, you think he's the one that needs to emerge and be the guy next year. I think he has the most potential. But he's not there yet. Like, he's still getting back into the rhythm of playing. Like, let's not kid ourselves. This is Big Ten basketball, and it's tough. Like, to come back from an injury and then try to catch up and get up to speed. It's difficult. So I'm not a huge fan. I do think, which is crazy, the one guy who kind of like makes it okay or would help with it would be Xavier Booker, because he can stretch the floor.
Yeah.
He can stand in the corner. And then you don't have to rely on Xavier to guard the opponent's like big, tough center, because you've got another one in there. And so like, that's the one that makes the most sense to me. And yet that's the one that other than those, 6 or 7 minutes that he plays in the first half, that's the only time we see it. And so again, it's just a cycle of the same things we've talked about, and I don't understand. I agree with you. I think Malik is a 4. The The only way I think he moves into the 3 again, I think it goes back to Xavier Booker just because of his ability to space the floor a little bit. And then you've got one of the three bigs in there. But no, I prefer Malik at the 4, mostly because I think his post-up game is really good. And we've seen that over these last several weeks. He is a guy who you want to throw the ball into and then let him go to work. Like, he's absolutely that guy. So no, I like him as the 4. Cohen is difficult because he's a little undersized for the 4, and yet he doesn't bring the shooting that you would like to see from the 3. So it's kind of a tough spot for him, or he's kind of a hybrid in between both. But you mentioned he played more against Michigan, and he does make an impact when he's out there. But I think he's just working on being in the right spot defensively and all those things. I have more faith that Izzo might give Cohen more run as the season kind of winds down here than I do Booker, just because we haven't seen it consistent, or we haven't seen Izzo trust Booker consistently, is what I'm trying to say. I thought there was a good point here from or a good couple questions from Steve again. And I would almost separate these two into 2 separate questions, because he asked, if you were a future NBA prospect, had real potential to be drafted, would you come to MSU? Is Izzo able to build a team, a scheme that would bring high caliber centers? The reason why I think this is kind of 2 separate issues, or 2 separate questions, is like the NBA and centers, like it's a different world now. And like the centers who play in the NBA, they are actually kind of like built the way Xavier Booker is built, maybe a little bit bigger. And Xavier's a freshman, so he'll put on some weight eventually. But like, I think these are 2 different questions. But I will say this though, the way that it's been a struggle for Xavier to get on the floor consistently, the way that it's been a struggle for Cohen to get on the floor consistently, that might be a bit of a deterrent for these high caliber prospects when they look at Michigan State. It's because it's one of 2 things: either Izzo doesn't trust the freshmen, or he wants to trust them, but they're not improving to the level where they can be out there consistently. Neither one of those things is good for recruiting, and so that's kind of my approach to that. Any response to this question or these pair of questions from Steve?
Yeah, I mean, it's really tough, because you look at some of the guys who are in the NBA right now for MSU. You look at, Draymond, and he talks about MSU constantly everywhere he goes. You look at Jaren Jackson, who, is a rising star that, by all means, if he learned not to foul, would be, a top 3 power forward in the league.
Yeah.
And you have guys like Xavier Tillman, who got a guaranteed contract. You have, a Gary Harris who, has quietly been in the league for over a decade now. And, you have guys in the league, and you have guys who have been in the league that are bought into, the Michigan State family. So I think the recruiting pitch is still there.
Yeah.
I think the Xavier Booker recruitment, I think that's a tough one, because, even guys like Xavier Tillman, even guys like, Xavier Booker kind of came into college who were kind of in between a like old school, Tillman was kind of an old school 4, or, a new school 5, because he was 6'8". And, Xavier Booker is kind of the opposite, where it's like, if he's going to be in the NBA, he's going to play a 4, but Izzo really wants him to play a 5, I think. And we see that because MSU, Jaren is the only 7-footer that Izzo's recruited since who knows?
Yeah, a long time.
Yeah, a while. So, I think they tried to sell Booker on that, the fact that he could be a Jaren-esque player, which, you can totally see in high school film, but, it's putting on the weight, obviously. So I think that situation is a little bit different. But, yeah, I mean, guards, It's tough because the NBA you have to be such a skilled guard. You have to be one of the best in the class. So I think if Tyson Walker was 6'3" or 6'4", I think he's looking at the NBA. But I think size wise that holds him back. I think Akins will make the NBA eventually, but again, I think size will hold him back because he's he plays a 3 right now, and if he was 6'6", he'd definitely be a first round pick. So it's a little bit of both. And then building a team to bring high caliber centers. I think the scheme that Izzo runs is built for centers. I think we've seen that, and we've seen that when MSU is like this, like in the past 3 years, it's because they don't have a high caliber center. We saw Xavier Tillman through his success through the team's success because of him. His sophomore year, even when Nick Ward went down and he stepped up, I mean, we saw MSU take a big step forward. I think you look at centers in the past for MSU, you look at a Matt Costello kind of player where that offense, it feels like it's built around for him to just be an avid rebounder, and if he can score anywhere around the rim and then sometimes pop out and get hit a 3 once in a while. Adrian Payne too, another guy who was a first round pick because of that. So I think the scheme is definitely built at least for centers in some sort. But it's finding the personnel to get them to play that type of scheme. And I think we're still looking for it, and Izzo's still looking for it. I think there is potential with Jackson Kohler that like you said, I think that's a good point too about how that injury, while it was only 3 or 4 months, that it feels like it set him back a year. So I think if maybe next year we might see some shades of him being that good, and by his senior year he is playing at a high level in the Big Ten. So I think there's a lot of potential that way. Schematically it's just finding that guy to play that high level role.
Yeah, for sure. Just a couple more notes that I made about the Iowa game, and then we'll move in. We'll kind of start to wrap things up now by looking ahead at where Michigan State projects in the Big Ten tournament right now. And there are 4 games left, and so this is going to shift. But it is kind of fun to look at what their road might be. But to wrap up the Iowa game, was disappointed in Jaden Akins just because I felt like against Iowa's zone particularly, there were shots to be made against that zone. I mean, and Michigan State went 10 for 20 from 3, and so they did a good job of finding good shots, and they shot 50% from outside. But Jaden, I just wasn't as involved in then. You've been on this point for most of the year about Jaden Akins' usage, and 2 for 7 from the floor, 2 for 6 from 3, and we saw AJ get to the rim and make an impact in the second half, and you've been kind of clamoring for Akins to do some of that same stuff too this season, and so kind of a disappointing outing for Akins. Malik Hall was. It's interesting. Like Malik Hall had the best stat line of anybody last night. He had 16 points, 10 rebounds, his second double this season, maybe third. I can't remember exactly. And then 5 assists. And so he had a great box score. Ironically, in plus minus, he was actually a team worst, -9, which means Iowa scored more points, 9 more points when he was on the floor than when he was on. So that's kind of strange because he had the best box score, but I think Malik was pretty good last night. Defensively, I think maybe like a lot of the guys struggled, but a good stat line for him. I thought Trey Holloman played well last night. Actually would have liked to see him a little bit more. Trey's been pretty quiet, I thought, over the previous several games coming into this one. He had really played well there for a stretch, and then lately was just kind of lost in the shuffle a little bit. Didn't make much of an impact, but I thought he played well again last night. And then last point here, should we be concerned at all with Tyson Walker? Just because he did find the shooting stroke last night, 4 of 8 from 3. You'll take that every night. I think that was coming off of like a 1 for 5 effort against Michigan. But again, the efficiency has seemed to come down over the last month or so. He shot 6 of 15 from the floor. We know he's dealing with the nagging groin injury. So is there any level of concern for Tyson?
Yeah, I mean, I thought kind of this stretch of games in February after the Illinois game would give him, the potential to maybe rest a little bit and maybe, hey, we get up early, we can rest Tyson, help him, go into March with be as healthy as he can be, and then now they're competing against Iowa, so I think there is a little bit of concern. I think it's more of with his health and his injury rather than his consistency. I think that's probably a higher level concern for me, just because I think it's more of how well Malik Hall's been playing. I think the fact that he's been playing at a consistent level and at a high level, and that really takes a load off of Akins and Walker and Hogard. So I think that helps. So yeah, that injury, it's just nagging, and it's nothing super serious, but it could lead to something serious, which could be a problem.
Right. Obviously we hope that is not the case.
Right.
All right, let's wrap things up now with kind of a brief look ahead at the Big Ten tournament. You touched on this a little bit earlier in the show. Michigan State has now fallen down to fifth place in the standings. They're a half game behind Northwestern, and for fourth place, and a full 1 game behind Wisconsin for third place. But the way you got to look at Wisconsin is it's almost like you're down 2 games, because Wisconsin has the sweep over Michigan State. And so unless I'm just wrong, it makes sense to me that they'd have to be ahead of Wisconsin, not tied with them, in order to get that spot. And so this loss was damaging. It was damaging to Michigan State's path for a potential Big Ten tournament run. It certainly, I'm curious to see when the updated NCAA tournament projections come out where Michigan State is slotted, because they were a 7 seed going into the Iowa game. And so just kind of for fun here, the Big Ten men's basketball Twitter page did put out the full bracket of where things stand right now with a couple weeks left. Michigan State is the 5 seed. They would play the winner of Ohio State and Maryland on the second day of the tournament right now. And then should they win that one, they would advance and play Northwestern, who's the 4 seed on the third day of the tournament. Purdue is obviously the 1 seed, Illinois, the 2 seed. So that's kind of where Michigan State is at right now. There is still a path for them to earn that double bye, but it got a whole lot more difficult after the loss to Iowa, and you need some help from. I haven't looked at Northwestern's schedule, but I
have it pulled up.
Do you? So who does Northwestern have down the stretch here?
Yeah, so they have Michigan at home, at Maryland, Iowa at home, at Michigan State, and then they finish off the season home against Minnesota. So nothing super difficult. But
yeah, it could come down to that game in East Lansing that could determine. But then again, Michigan State has that game against Purdue. So yeah, you probably for sure need to beat Northwestern that night. That has to happen, and you probably need them to lose another game somewhere in there, because. Look, right now, I can't pick Michigan State to go upset Purdue. Even as much as Purdue this time of year just seems like the loss to Ohio State. Like, where does that come from? Like, they have those moments, but at Mackey, those moments are pretty few and far between. So
yeah,
I can't predict a Michigan State win in that game right now. So you need some help in addition to beating Northwestern in about a week and a half or so, whenever that is. So Eggplant asks, will we make the Big Ten tournament? Yes, Michigan State will make the Big Ten tournament. I think he's being facetious there, but that one's pretty locked in until next year when the bottom three. I can't stand this conference realignment stuff. We've talked about this over the summer, but the fact that not everybody's going to play in the Big Ten tournament bothers me. This 18-team league. And the separate, we'll do a whole nother show on that. So I don't want to get into it, but I'm not a fan of it. I did want to end on a positive note here. Tough discussions today. But I wanted to give a shout out again to Michigan State's hockey team, who has a 7-point lead in the Big Ten standings right now, going into a 2-game series against Ohio State. Ohio State is in last place in the Big Ten, so Michigan State would be favored to get the job done. They're at home against the Buckeyes this weekend. If they beat Ohio State twice in regulation this weekend, they will clinch the Big Ten regular season conference championship, which would be their first one since 2001. So I'm not a huge hockey guy. I do pull for the Red Wings and things like that. But I have been kind of following Michigan State hockey a little bit, and anxious to see if they can kind of get this done this weekend against Ohio State, because the following weekend they have a 2-game series on the road at Wisconsin. Wisconsin's in second place right now. And so if Michigan State's not able to seal the deal this weekend, then you kind of open the door for Wisconsin the following weekend when you have to go to their arena. So I'm keeping an eye on that at least Friday and Saturday to see what happens with the Michigan State hockey team. Adam Nightingale obviously has done a really good job. So I figured I'd save that for the very end of the show. Little positive note to wrap things up on. Check out. We'll cover that a little bit on our website and Facebook page. As we wind down here, don't forget to visit our website, si.com, College Michigan State, to get all of our coverage of Michigan State athletics. We do appreciate you guys joining us, and we'll see you next time.